Joshua drained an energy drink and tossed the can to the ground. A cleaning bot appeared out of nowhere to take the garbage away. "Mom, I'm home!" An elegant woman entered the kitchen, carrying a babbling toddler. She approached the teenager and gave him a kiss on the forehead. "Joshy, baby, how was school?" "I'm not a kid anymore, Mom." Josh whined as he wiped his head. "I did fine in school. My mech trainer complimented me again today." "That's good news. The better your performance, the higher your rank when you become a reservist. Just don't join the mech corps." "I'm not going to," Joshua said. He walked to the hall and up the stairs. As he entered his room and threw his bag on his bed, he shouted downstairs, "I'm gonna play with the simulator again, okay?" "Don't forget about dinner again." "Yes, Mom." Joshua left his room and went back downstairs. He went down 2 stories and entered the basement. In a specially cooled and isolated room was his personal mech simulator pod for Iron Spirit. It was an expensive piece of machinery, and it outperformed the rental pods at the game center. His parents had even forked out the money to dig a secure set of cables into the nearest galactic net node to ensure his bandwidth never faltered. All of this made Joshua's pod the best performing unit on Cloud Curtain. Joshua entered the pod and let it close around him. He leaned his head back into the headrest that served as the neural interface. It hummed as it came to life, connecting his brain signals to the programs executed by the pod. The world changed. The cool steel walls of the simulator pod were replaced by a vibrant world. Many young men and women around his age walked through the digital streets of the starting area. Some sat next to fountains, watching the live streams of popular players who chose to broadcast publicly. Others entered the many stores to shop for new outfits. Joshua pulled up his friends list and tapped at one of the names to begin a dialogue. "Yo, Tops." "Hey, a snake," Triceratops said. His face appeared at the corner of Joshua's view. "Up for another round of arena?" Josh shook his head. "I don't feel like it today. The 1 versus 1 and 2 versus 2s have been getting kind of stale for me lately. I'm ready for something different." "Oh," Triceratops said, as he switched to matchmaking. "You want to play Capture the Flag or Base Conquest?" "Let's do Capture the Flag. It's 5-on-5, so I feel like my skills still matter in that game mode." The two paired up and entered matchmaking for Capture the Flag as a duo. They received 3 random players to make up numbers for their 5-person team. "Hey, fellas," Triceratops greeted his new teammates. "Me and Snake here are pairing up as light mechs." "Medium missile platform," the third player said shortly. His tone conveyed his distaste for any further interaction. "Okay, what about the rest?" "Heavy Knight. Just plant me next to our flag and I'll make sure anyone who touches it dies," the fourth player boasted. Defending the flag was the most traditional role in Capture the Flag, and it was perfect for a heavy mech. "Got any guns on your knight?" "No, but I'm faster than other knights." "Great," Triceratops said with a sigh. "At least you can chase the enemy if someone manages to steal the flag from underneath us." "So what about the last guy?" "I'm a girl, thanks," the young woman emphasized with a sneer. "Just get out of my way. If you must know, I'm piloting a Genesis 18. "The medium spider mech?" "So, you do have more than 3 brain cells. Congratulations, doofus." "Ha ha," Triceratops said sarcastically. "Well, our team's a little light on weight, but we're mobile. Let's do a 4-to-1. 3-to-2, the missiler interjected. "My mech's a glass cannon. I'm best at supporting the heavy knight and providing long-range missile support." "I'm attacking from the rear," the spider mech girl said. "I work best if I can sneak up on them alone, so don't you dare follow me." Triceratops sighed again. Joshua, the 7th snake, consoled him in a private chat. "Don't bother too much. Getting your teammates to work together, like in school, doesn't always work. A lot of players just want to blow off steam." "God, I hope they make an effort. My win rate for Capture the Flag is already in the toilet. I'm always teamed up with egotistical morons." The matchmaking system's bell sounded, which signaled that its search for an opposing team had been successful. The screen changed to a small lobby, where their team could inspect the enemy's loadout while the random battlefield loaded in the background. The 7th snake analyzed the enemy team's composition and felt a headache forming. They have a 3-person pre-mate? They're all kitted out in the same heavy mechs. He didn't recognize the variants, but they looked a lot like the strikers he had fought earlier that week. One of them has a bunch of close-ranged heat projectors, the seventh snake said. The others transformed his arms into medium-range ballistic cannons. The last guy looks like their long-range marksman with his jumbo-sized laser rifle. It was a composition that lacked mobility, but had power in spades. If they relied on their tough armor and plentiful energy reserves, they could bulldoze anything in their way. The two randoms in their team have adjusted to the trio and come in with light mechs, Triceratops noted. There's one aerial scout and one saboteur. That's plenty of mobility for them to plug their gaps. The seventh snake shook his head. Not really. You can be sure the three meatheads will stick together. We're either going to face a heavy push or a full-on defense. If they keep the turtle in their base, I can bombard them from behind a hill, the missiler said curtly. And if their team attacks, their flag will only be defended by two lights. The map finished loading, and everyone appeared inside a small open fort. A lengthy flagpole protruded from the middle of the parade ground. All right, let's move. The spider mech girl crawled over the walls with her 8 limbs and disappeared from view. The missiler took off in the other direction, while the heavy knight planted its feet right next to the flag. Triceratops followed the seventh snake on the ground as he flew up in the air. The first thing we need to do is find the 3 heavies and figure out what they're up to, the seventh snake told his teammates. Me and Tops will scout the enemy first. As a flyer, Snake Seraphim traversed the forest prairie environment with effortless grace. Tops' Phantasm could only slink through the trees at a third of the pace. However, the ground mech was able to minimize its emissions to stay hidden, while the flyer radiated heat and color as its iconic cloud generator spewed clouds of vapor. The seventh snake didn't care if the enemy spotted him quickly. Even as his Seraphim extended its sensor hairs in the wind, he was already anticipating their fire. After piloting the Seraphim for many hours, he was confident in his ability to dodge. The seventh snake was distracted when a notification popped up. Someone is spectating me. That's strange. Oh well, as long as he isn't feeding information to my opponents, I don't care. A barrage of laser fire emerged from a cloud. Some of the beams scorched the seventh snake's armor, thankfully not damaging anything essential. I'm under fire from their air scout. Engaging. Tops, keep searching for their heavies. Don't let this distraction fool you. Triceratops nodded as his phantasm continued to comb the surrounding area. Roger that, pal. My ground-air missiles are ready to fire. The missiler interrupted. Maintain contact and feed your target lock to me. No, stay out of this fight. I can handle this guy myself. Don't reveal your position. The Seraphim flared its wings and moved from side to side as it returned fire with its light DMR. Its jerky, lateral movements made it a hard target, but its own long-ranged rifle also seemed to be inefficient. Snake increased his speed and approached his target furiously. His heart pumped faster, and his brain went into a heightened state. His Seraphim holstered the rifle on its back, which was difficult due to its wings, and retrieved a pair of heated knives. Like the fangs of a predator, it wielded them in a reverse grip and rocketed itself toward the enemy flyer in a charging attack. The enemy mech panicked. It was loaded for long to medium-range harassment. The pilot felt much less confident in a melee than the seventh snake, so he flew back and engaged his mech's thrusters to escape the approaching rainbow mech. Die! The seventh snake yelled as he exerted his Seraphim to the utmost, managing to close the distance at the cost of overheating his mech's wings. I can take it. My mech is meant to rule the skies. The enemy mech dove downward in order to gain speed and perhaps seek help from its allies on the ground. However, the Seraphim anticipated the move and accelerated a split second earlier. The brilliant decision allowed it to close the distance just enough for Snake to feel the opposing mech's heat. You're mine now! The light mech gave up any hope of escape and flipped in the air, presenting its medium-powered laser rifle. The Seraphim crossed its arms just as the lasers pelted it, causing more spots to blacken and melt away. The enemy mech had evidently overheated its rifle and sacrificed its endurance for a massive boost in firepower. It's too late! Snake yelled as he made his Seraphim spin. The rotation allowed it to dodge the last set of lasers while adding momentum to its poised and outstretched knives. The light mech extended its rifle in desperation, blocking its body with its bulk. One heated knife impaled its body, shearing the weapon into nothing. The other knife passed around the weapon entirely and scored a deep blow in the mech's shoulder, practically crippling its left arm. The Seraphim finished delivering its blows, leaving it open to a kick from the light mech. The feeble attack hardly damaged the Seraphim, but it did manage to push it away, leaving the half-crippled mech enough space to continue to fall. Instead of chasing its prey, the Seraphim holstered its knives and retrieved its rifle. With a calm and steady aim, it fired a constant stream of energy bolts. The first one went wide, but as the light mech failed to adjust in time, the next bolts hit its wings. The damage was light, but it disrupted their operation. The light mech posed an easier target once its speed was reduced. The subsequent energy bolts shredded the rest of its wings, leaving it incapable of correcting its fall. "Their aerial scout's doomed," the Seventh Snake stated, as he watched the smoking mech crash into the ground and explode. "What's the situation on the ground?" "Their saboteur is good," the spider mech girl responded. "He got 2 of my legs, but he hasn't come out unscathed. Don't bother me, let me focus on the duel." "Their heavies are attacking our base. I'm having a hard time keeping them off our flag," the heavy knight gasped. "Mr. Missile Fan is helping, but I really need more help." Triceratops also updated his status. "I've taken their flag. Since Spider Mech is doing a good job keeping their remaining light mech occupied, I can either help her out or go back to base, but I won't be able to deliver the flag with the heavy boys around." "Return to base," the Seventh Snake said firmly. "We need to destroy at least 2 out of 3 of those heavies to give you an opening to deliver the flag." "Okay, boss." The Seraphim flew back to the base while the flag-carrying phantasm ran across the terrain. The Seventh Snake assessed his mech's damage and energy reserves and concluded it could withstand one more all-in assault. "Damn it, they took my sword arm. I've only got my shield left," the knight said. "Hang on, I'm coming," the Seventh Snake responded. He broke through the clouds and flew over his team's base. His sensors detected the glowing hot forms of the enemy trio. The close-ranged, heat-projecting enemy had pinned down the heavy knight and slowly melted its armor. The medium-range ballistic gunner had succeeded in blowing off the heavy knight's sword arm and was currently working on its legs. As for the long-range marksman, it had already circled around to the side to suppress their missiler. To its credit, the missiler used its superior mobility to stay one step ahead of the enemy marksman. It took advantage of the surrounding hills to keep out of sight. All the while, it fired sporadic volleys of arcing missiles onto the other 2 heavy mechs, using the telemetry the heavy knight sent back. The missiles hadn't inflicted any critical damage to the 2 mechs, but the frequent explosions degraded their sensors and stripped much of their top-facing armor. The 2 bruisers were so engrossed in bullying the heavy knight that the Seraphim was able to position itself at the rear. It dove in a thrilling, heart-stopping power fall. The Seventh Snake overcharged his DMR, causing its chamber to accumulate so much energy that smoke began to escape. He even overloaded his rear side cloud generator so that it created a vast rainbow wall that approached the unsuspecting 2 mechs like a tsunami. The heavy knight's location allowed it to see the oncoming attack, and it fell slack for a second, which proved to be a fatal mistake. When a cannon shell ripped apart its right leg, causing the mech to lose its balance, the cannoneer reloaded its shells, evidently assuming that his target was already dead, and the heat-projecting mech took advantage of its vulnerability. Just as it was in the middle of swapping its magazine, the cannoneer felt an invisible pressure from behind. After switching to the rear sensor feeds, it suddenly noticed an attack from the air. "Die!" The Seventh Snake bellowed as he fired an enormous energy bolt at the flat-footed canyon mech. The bolt zapped through the air like a hot knife through butter. A huge ball of energy splashed against the mech's rifle, coincidentally damaging its magazine and causing it to explode in a devastating ripple. The bolt fell apart, with most of its energy dispersing into the air, but some of the damage landed on the mech's front, ruining its surface internals. The Seventh Snake had already decoupled and tossed aside his slagged rifle. With his twin heated knives, he struck the damaged and bleeding mech on its head and upper torso. He landed with so much momentum behind him that the knives tore through the remnants of the heavy mech's armor and ruined several of its critical systems, the most important of which was the power reactor embedded in its chest. The canyoneer, now cut off from its power source, shut itself off. Snake's Seraphim landed on the disabled mech's chest and bent its knees to mitigate its momentum. The move left it open to attack from the remaining heavy mech. The heat projector ignored the heavy knight, which had been reduced to a molten statue, and ran back to avenge its comrade. With his Seraphim already running as hot as an oven, even a glancing hit from the wide area heat projectors would cause Snake to boil alive inside his own mech. A Acutely aware of the impending crisis, the seventh snake acted in desperation. In a feat of exemplary control, the Seraphim spread its legs and used its grip on the embedded knives to spin itself around the unpowered mech's torso. The air flashed with white-hot heat, and the projectors fired. The cannon mech's ruined armor suffered a catastrophic amount of damage, and some of its Eternals even caught fire. The Seraphim's exposed legs melted, rendering them incapable of supporting its own weight. The seventh snake managed to preserve his mech's waist and upper body. The Seraphim leaned over, using the burning cannoneer as a shield, and did something stupid. It threw its knives at its opponent. The heat-projecting mech was startled and hastily tried to angle its armor against the incoming projectiles, but the weapons fell short and landed on the ground. The heat projector was enraged and stomped over, firing its heat weapon without regard. The seventh snake continued to hug the increasingly hot cannon mech, hoping desperately that it would hold up. "Tops! Got it!" The heat projector inadvertently walked away from its allocated post, leaving the waiting Triceratops a narrow window to approach. His phantasm swiftly but quietly climbed the walls of the fort and made a beeline to the center, where his own team's flag rested. The heat projector's pilot noticed his mistake and commanded his mech to turn around. With a pair of heat projectors poised to fire, the phantasm was bound to suffer greatly. The seventh snake managed to pry his battered, half-molten Seraphim away from its shield. With its legs disabled, the Seraphim crawled with all the strength its feeble arms could muster. It approached the distracted heavy mech and reached out to grab onto the heat projectors. The Seraphim succeeded in ruining the aim of one of the heat projectors. Subsequently, the bigger mech unleashed much of its molten fury harmlessly onto the ground. The other heat projector successfully hit the phantasm. However, the mech had suffered no damage beforehand, and with only one projector landing a hit, the phantasm maintained its mobility. Triceratops ran with a limp and successfully planted its enemy's flag next to its own team's unconquered banner. "Yes! Woohoo! You interrupted my duel!" While his teammates cheered and grumbled, the seventh snake sank back in his cockpit with a satisfied expression. The victory had invigorated him, even though he felt as if he had almost been cooked by the excessive heat. "We won," the seventh snake said with a smile. He let out a deep breath. "I'm getting better at this, but my Seraphim won't be happy I trashed it again." Then he remembered that someone had been spectating him throughout the entire match. The seventh snake opened his personal page and switched to his stream. He read the name of his only spectator. Chasing Clouds. That sounds familiar.